I am what seems to be a homeless person's tent and what is going on in it. And they just had me pick up her journal to kind of explain what had happened and how she got here. And there's a radio, there's suitcases, a cot, bags, lamp, just everything you would have in your home just sits in a tent. So the police are at my tent and they are rummaging through the stuff, and the trash people are here and everything's just getting taken away. And the lady I'm following is right outside her tent and she's crying because she just lost her home. So yeah, this is hard. This is real hard.
Who you're hearing is Ohio State nursing student Jordan Dallas, and she is not in a tent. She didn't pick up a journal because there is no journal. There are no police, no radio, no bags, no homeless woman. And that's because Jordan is in a virtual reality simulation. Ohio State is leveraging these immersive simulations to better teach nursing students. It expands their empathy and gives them a taste of what these real-world situations are actually like, inevitably improving their skills and commitment to bettering healthcare across the board.
They just had people knock on the tent a few minutes ago, and I was like, oh my God, someone's coming in here. I would feel devastated right now. Like, I was in the tent when the police were in there, and I was like, oh my gosh, they are taking everything out. They are destroying everything. And when that's all somebody has at some point, it's really hard. Experiencing this helps me realize, like, it is very hard for people. A lot of people aren't in shelters. A lot of people are in tents like this, and it's really eye-opening to make sure you really understand how people are living and where they came from and how this happened to them. I've watched TV shows, of course, but nothing like I've ever experienced. It really hit you. I was like, I was not prepared for that one.
I'm Amanda DeJong, and you're listening to Now at Ohio State. We talk with researchers, innovators, and bold thinkers who look at our world, see what the real challenges are, and create the solutions that people need now. We'll check back in with Jordan a little later in the episode. For now, let's explore what immersive simulation education is and how it's helping our students. Michael Ackerman is the director of the Master in Healthcare Innovation Program and professor of clinical nursing at The Ohio State University. And Stephanie Justice is an assistant professor of clinical nursing. She is also one of 16 simulation educators from across the country who were selected for the National League for Nursing's year-long leadership development program for simulation educators. Together, these two are pioneering the use of extended and virtual reality as a crucial teaching tool in the classroom. From immersing students in intense hospital scenarios to transporting them to a homeless encampment, these lessons can range from jarring and stressful to intense and heartbreaking. But they're an incredible way to expand the skill sets and knowledge of students going into the nursing field. Together, they sit down and chat with our Chris Bornay about the program at Ohio State, how it's impacting students, and what they think the future of immersive simulation education is shaping up to be.
Well, Stephanie, Mike, thanks for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it. To start off, can you tell me about the Reimagining Nurses grant and the pilot program that you've started and how it uses extended reality, artificial intelligence, and machine learning?
Sure. About 2 years ago, the American Nurses Foundation put out a call for proposals, and the title was Reimagining Nursing, funded by primarily the Kaiser Foundation. So we had an ongoing relationship with Mike Rayo in the College of Engineering in his machine learning and artificial intelligence lab. So we aligned with him and developed the proposal. There was, I think, 340 applications, and they awarded 10. So we were pretty fortunate. The purpose of the grant was to integrate extended reality and machine learning and artificial intelligence into our entire undergraduate program, which is about 700. Yeah, about 700 students.
And can you describe some of the simulations that the students have participated in so listeners can kind of get a sense of what they're actually doing with the simulations?
Yeah, so we actually have quite a few different styles that we've been using. We have one that we're using that is for soft skill training. So actually practicing talking to people. And there's different scenarios in there, like dealing with an angry person or an angry patient or talking to a suicidal patient. And it lets you practice and you get feedback. And you actually swap bodies at one point in that, and you get to see your avatar and hear yourself talk. So it's kind of neat because sometimes you're like, "Ooh, I really put my foot in my mouth on that one." And then we do a lot of patient care scenarios. So one of my favorite ones that we do is actually in our pediatrics course. And the patient has a seizure because of a high fever. And the seizure starts really fast within like about a minute in the scenario. And the students aren't really quite prepared for it because it feels very realistic. And I've had people like jump up and like almost have a panic attack because the child's seizing in front of them while they're standing in the room with a headset with, nothing around them. And then they have to care for the patient and talk to the parent who keeps going, "What's wrong with my child?" It can be pretty stressful.
Sure.
And we have one other that we use in our community health nursing. And this one has been really an interesting one to watch and get the feedback from students. We put them into a tent of a homeless woman, and you get to experience her life and how she got there. And it helps to develop empathy. And the students will come out saying, I'm never going to think of someone who's homeless the same. I'm so close to, I could see how I could easily end up there. And I'm fortunate I'm not.
And I think the key term there is empathy. There's really no other way to experience empathy and see what life is through the eyes of a patient or somebody else than this technology. You can role play it with peers or whatever. You could watch videos about it, but this truly lets you see what life is like through the eyes of a patient, and it does change you.
And we actually get students when they take off their headset, they're a little teary-eyed at the end. They're just like, man, that was something, and you can't just teach that.
So what is the ultimate goal of the pilot? Is it merely to help the students develop empathy and just to kind of get some hands-on training? Or
one of the first goals is to integrate these competencies into our curriculum and then evaluate them using different technologies, VR, machine learning, artificial intelligence. So it's really aimed at rolling out a competency-based curriculum, utilizing the educational technology. One of the other goals is to create a practice-ready nursing graduate, which means when they walk out of the door, they're ready to practice. And the current state is it takes anywhere between 6 to 12 months for that graduate to be ready to take on an assignment independently. That's not a sustainable economic model. And the hospital systems are pushing back saying, can you do something about this? We've only got a year's worth of data so far, so we don't have a lot of data to show that it's working. But what we do have suggests that the more immersive learning that they are involved in, the more likely they are to pass the boards and the more likely they are to be closer to practice ready.
Well, I think one important thing to remember with that is when we can put them into these immersive simulations where they're in there by themselves, like you are as a nurse when you're licensed and practicing, we can give them a critical patient and let them do their best and see what they know and where they have, learning deficits, and not have to worry about what happens to the patient. Because if they're in the hospital, we're not going to let them just go, right? If they're wrong, we're not going to go, just keep going. But in an immersed, simulated patient, we can let them maybe make the wrong decision or select the wrong test or not call the provider when they should because it's not a real patient. And, when we make a mistake or something doesn't go as well, I really hate when we say that it sounds like you're blaming them with mistake. But, if it's not perfect, you learn more than if it goes perfect, right? And if there's nobody to intervene, you really are pulling on all of your knowledge. And sometimes you're not quite sure what to do. And we can let them do that in the immersive. And I think that really helps speak to that practice ready because sometimes your best bet as the nurse is call somebody else to help you.
Right. So this really sounds like cutting edge technology and kind of a rare opportunity that students here at Ohio State are getting. Can you kind of talk about that?
it's becoming more popular. A lot of people are asking about it. How do they implement it? How do you do it? How much does it cost? And I think as far as nursing goes, I think we're one of the few nursing schools that actually has a dedicated XR lab. We do have other places that have some XR here on campus. The College of Medicine does a few simulations in virtual reality as well. But as far as like a dedicated one in nursing, I don't know if I've heard of very many of them in the country.
The non-nurses on our team are incredibly talented. The ability to design some of our own stuff because our people have that skill is amazing. And you'd have a hard time finding that anyplace else. And the software vendors will come to us and they say, oh, we can do this for you. We can do that for you. And we're like, well, we can do that ourselves, and then, oh, it's expensive. I like, no, we've hired these people. And so we've even had vendors say, well, would you share that with us? And it's like, no, we're not going to do that. But so we're fortunate that, and our students are fortunate, number one, that they have the ability to do this. We've developed the expertise. Stephanie has just been amazing in developing this expertise. But we also have the people in the background that support us to do this, and you have a hard time finding that anyplace else in the country.
Do you see extended reality and virtual reality and all its different forms being used more in nursing education in the future?
I think for sure, because I think the technology is just getting better. Better headsets, things are looking more realistic. Mm-hmm. And I think once we can show that it does work, that it helps, that it improves and it expands that learning and the opportunities, I think it's going to just keep growing.
Another part of our grant was to develop toolkits. Mm-hmm. And Stephanie, why don't you talk about the work you've done developing toolkits?
So the first toolkit that I worked on with a couple of colleagues from other places as part of a project I did for the NLN, and it's an overview of all types of XR, how to select them, things to think about that like I had no idea when we first started. What about cleaning? What about disinfecting? And how do you schedule people and pick software? And it goes through all of the steps of like getting ready to set up for a VR and XR lab. And then we're going to do more toolkits. And our plan is to be able to launch and implement into someone else's curriculum to give them basically an how-to and things to look for to help get it in other places where you might have only one person running the lab or a very small group, because it's time consuming to do all of the research and to figure it all out.
Sure.
Yeah. And we know not everybody's Ohio State, and we have a different set of resources, both human resources as well as financial. So with that in mind, we'll develop these toolkits that, depending on what your situation is, like Stephanie said, you might have one person in your sim lab. And, we have 700 plus undergrads. There might be programs that have 30. So we're conscious of that, and we'll provide guidelines based on where you're at and make it scalable depending. I think it's going to continue to grow, and it's going to become more accessible, and costs are going to come down, and the technology is going to get better. So I think it's going to continue to grow.
Right. This is a really fascinating subject. So Stephanie and Mike, thanks again for taking the time to speak about your work.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
So let's check back in with Jordan. As mentioned before, she's a nursing student at Ohio State, and she's taken part in these immersive learning scenarios. Now that she's out of the virtual tent and back to the real world, she takes a moment to chat, again with our Chris Bornay. They talk about her experiences with immersive learning, how it's helping her with learning and training, and what she sees for the future of these programs.
Can you describe the virtual reality training that you're participating in?
Yeah, so we put on a VR headset. They're very common now, and you log into a specific program. They have live programs that give you different experiences in and outside of the hospital, and just kind of what we're learning about in class. So it could be about meningitis. We've had that one before. It can be about concussions, and you just go in, you ask questions, you do assessments, figure out what's going on with the patient, and just the best strategies on how to approach the patient.
Did you have any familiarity or experience with VR before you did this training?
Yeah, so I babysat two little boys and they got it for Christmas one year. So I had previously used a VR headset to play golf or something, and it was better because I knew how to use the equipment more than the rest of us who wouldn't use it before. But I know a lot of people get nauseous with it the first time they used it. But then the second time it was more natural. It was more like a game more than or less than like you're in a virtual reality with nauseousness. So a lot of people liked it the second time around more than the first, and you got more comfortable with it. The headset was uncomfortable the first time, but then more you got into it, you figured out where to place it, how tight to put it on. It was a lot more comfortable and a lot more realistic. It was really cool. This is my third time doing VR, and I would say I feel incredibly comfortable with it now. I know what buttons to press, how to use the joysticks, how to position the monitor on my head that I see, so I see the world the best that I can. And yeah, I would say I get very much more comfortable with it.
How does the VR training complement the in-person hands-on training?
It is the most realistic other than being in a hospital. So you go in, you ask the patient questions, you do all of your assessments, you do a head to toe. You can do labs, you can do your analysis, you can get all of that back within seconds, and then you can continuously plan how you want to take care of this patient. And it's really good because most of the VRs, they complement what we're doing in class and what we're learning about at the moment. So it is really good to figure out how you should really do this in the real life setting.
Does the VR training take the pressure off since you're not in a real life setting with a real patient?
Yeah, so you can do a lot of the assessments and even the program over a couple times to figure out what you're doing wrong, how you should do it better the next time. You get feedback after you finish it one time, and then you can go back in and do it differently as many times as you want. And it does take the pressure off because a lot of new grad nurses don't know how to really start a situation and how to approach a patient the first time. So this is really the most realistic we can get than being in a hospital.
Are there any ways you'd like to see the VR program expanded, maybe features added?
I think right now it's a great program. I've only used it for nursing, so I'm not sure if other fields are using it, but it is really, really useful for the nursing field and how to really do everything without having to do it in person. And you get a lot of experience.
Do you think you'll be more prepared for your career as a nurse, having had this VR training, so that when real life situations come up, you've already handled them in the VR setting?
Honestly, yes, definitely. It really helps plan and helps you give the experience of really taking care of that patient when you're not really, because it's virtual reality, but it does help a lot, and I will feel more prepared with certain situations.
Thanks, Jordan. We appreciate your time.
When a lot of people think of virtual reality, they think of video games and entertainment. Golf, for instance, like Jordan said. But being digitally immersed in a homeless camp is nothing of the sort. Caring for a virtual child who is suffering a seizure, then consoling their parent, is not a game. What they are, though, are powerful and impactful ways to teach lessons by leveraging the emerging and growing technology around us. It's amazing to think that students can be transported to another world, all while they stand in a classroom, flexing their empathy skills, honing their decision-making tactics under the pressure of a simulated healthcare emergency. It really makes you wonder what the future of virtual reality and these immersive courses hold. Where will it transport our minds? And how can we apply the lessons learned there when we take the headsets off? Now at Ohio State is produced by The Ohio State University's Office of Marketing and Communications. For more information, visit us at go.osu.edu/now. I'm your host, Amanda DeJong. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.